Hello everybody and welcome back to ChäoS. Let me go ahead and get the timer started. 1 second. Okay. Naturally, the group diving video became a huge topic of conversation after it started streaming online. As Grimm had told me, the internet was going bonkers over it. Many at 8chan were convinced that all 4 new-gen homicides had been committed by the same murderer. Let's see. Whose eyes are those is the new-gen criminal's signature. The guy who put it on YouTube has to be the perp. Awesome stuff. Whose eyes are, etc. Alrighty, I'll report it to... Oh, whose eyes are... And then, I guess, acts like he got killed and has rolled his face all over his keyboard. The message of vampire was whose eyes are, etc. That makes a connection between the first and last new-gen cases. Even though everyone used to say they weren't related, so we can add in the pregnant man and the staking too. Crap, getting way too excited about this. Plus, whose eyes, etc. first showed up in Vampire House, so whoever did it couldn't have been imitating the group diving. Don't look this way, lol. Whose eyes, etc. I saw the vid, but doesn't it seem kind of fake? I bet 1 cent that some acting troupe had it to get press. Or did it to get press. Don't overuse the whose eyes phrase or whatever, you twerps. All it'll do is make the perp get even more into it. So are we like totally sure it's all the same guy now? Like, it's actually just 2 meters tall and they had a landing mat spread out right below it. Roll on floor laughing. Agreed. More people are gonna get killed while you guys keep using those words. Get a hold of yourself. It's not funny anymore. Whose eyes are, etc. I live in Shibuya. Okay. Don't look this way. The YouTube video, it's racked up top number of views. Whoa, lol, don't look my way. Haha. Here it is, the top story on MHK News. Which I'm going to assume is supposed to be a joke on NHK, not MHK. I'm assuming it's supposed to be that type of joke. Or, you know, not joke, but, you know, a play on. No declaration of responsibility from whose eyes, etc. yet. Special program on all the commercial stations, except for Tokyo TV. Ha ha ha. The TV reports were getting overheated as well. Like 140 had mentioned, all the big channels except Tokyo TV were broadcasting special programs and they aired the aforementioned video over and over. The special programming itself ended in about an hour, but it was a minor shock for the country when that video got broadcasted nationwide. Although all of the stations voluntarily censored themselves, cutting off the last scene where the actual jumping took place, it still had an astoundingly powerful impact. The drift of the debate on TV was by and large the same as online, and people seemed to have all but decided that the 4 new-gen cases had been committed by the same criminal. Which was natural enough. They'd already discovered common ground between 2 of the new-gen incidents. Whose eyes are those? The phrase currently going around Shibuya. It had originally made its public debut via the 4th new-gen case, Vampire House. Despite that, one of the victims from the group diving, which took place over a month earlier, had let the same words slip. At present, these words were known to have been used in the first and last of the 4 new-gen incidents. What that pointed to was, as everyone thought, the possibility that the 4 incidents had been triggered by the same perpetrator. The police had an emergency press conference where they announced their response by stating that they would move to identify the uploader with all possible speed. Some politicians were also saying things like, "How greatly regrettable. The criminal must be apprehended as soon as possible." The YouTube video was deleted by the site less than 3 hours after it got uploaded, but by then it was too late. 8chaners had long since finished capturing the video and spreading it around by uploading it here and there and everywhere. No one could stop them. Then, late at night, the following fact was revealed via a police announcement. The room of the group diving incident had been uploaded from the PC in room 37 of a certain manga cafe, which was located in the Shibuya area. Ruh-roh. I think that's our room. Seated at my desk, I slumped over and hugged myself. Without my realizing it, I had started eavesdropping. Today, I was oversensitive to the voices of those around me. I listened to all kinds of conversations, but no big surprise there. Everyone was talking about the group dive video from yesterday. There were also girls jokingly saying, "Whose eyes are those?" to each other. I bit my lip and studied the surface of my desk. That video was proof. A proof that Shogun existed. Proof that I hadn't killed anyone. Which meant I didn't have multiple personalities. The old man in the wheelchair was the new-gen perpetrator. But for what reason could Shogun have deliberately uploaded that video? Why would he himself do something to hint at his identity, when the criminal had previously been swathed in mystery? When I pondered this, I came up with two conclusions. The first one was that Shogun was the attention-seeking type of criminal. The chances of this seemed pretty high given how he had gone out of his way to show himself to me. As for the other possibility, he was challenging me. For some reason, or for reasons unknown, Shogun, along with his underling Yua, were meddling with me. I didn't know why they felt the need to do so, but they'd almost succeeded in setting me up as the new-gen criminal. It was possible that the police continued to suspect me even now. The Shogun was attempting to entrap me.
僕のメッセージは受け取ってくれた。目覚めるんだ。早く出ないと。もっとたくさんの人が死んじゃうことになるから。忘れないで。君は逃げちゃいけない。
Thus, Shogun had spoken to me when he showed himself before me. I could only think of it as a form of intimidation, the equivalent of, "I'm gonna kill you, so don't run away." And this time, he'd taken the unprecedented action of uploading the video and making sure it was seen throughout Japan. Shogun had undoubtedly moved to the next step of his plan. I had been naive to think that maybe he'd stop targeting me. On the contrary, it'd be better to assume that he had at last begun to attack and plot against me in earnest. I was scared. That video had given me the shakes. Despite the fact that Shogun was, physically speaking, under a far worse handicap than me, he had killed 5 high schoolers without lifting a finger. If everything new-gen related had been done by the same person, it meant that Shogun had enacted the brutal pregnant man, staking, and vampire cases with his diminutive body. Or maybe Yua had helped him. Either way, I didn't have any confidence in my ability to protect myself against people capable of carrying out such horrific acts with ease. My terror of them, my rage against the unfairness of my being targeted, and the message of "whose eyes are those?" If I weren't careful, I'd start trembling. I'd suppress that. I would have to keep myself from relaxing for the time being, or to suppress that rather. I constantly paid close heed to my surroundings and braced myself so I could flee if someone seemed to be approaching. I didn't know when Shogun, or else Yua, might suddenly appear before me. For that matter, I had no guarantee that Yua was the only one working under Shogun. Someone connected to Shogun might be among my classmates now, indulging in carefree chatter all around me. I had to do everything in my power to avoid being ambushed, like yesterday at that cafe. If not, I'd get killed next time for sure. I had to get a D-sword, fast. Obtaining a D-sword was the only way to break free of my current situation. After listening to ISA and Senna and actually researching it online, I was all but certain of it. I'd be saved if I got my hand on a D-sword. Yesterday evening, I'd been frantically collecting information on D-swords while I kept an eye on the Frenzy online, but I didn't meet with much success. I cradled my head, digging my fingers through my greasy hair. How the hell was I supposed to become the owner of a D-sword? And yet, somehow, you ended up becoming the owner of one. Which, of course, is not very helpful. ISA had told me so, but it was asking too much to say that without giving me a single hint. I was becoming more and more impatient. Anxiety threatened to make my chest cave in. Hurry. I had to hurry and find a D-sword, no matter what it took. A D-sword. You've got to find it. Everything will be over if you don't find it. I've got to find it, before I become the next new-gen victim. But how was I supposed to find one? I didn't know of any good methods. Some kind of hint. A hint. I have to rush, or I'll lose my chance to find it. Am I capable of finding it? This wasn't the time to be doing stuff like coming to school. My life and my ability to graduate, there was no need to weigh them against one another. Yet, why was I? Sensing someone's approach, I raised my head in a flash and recoiled. Rimi was there, blinking at the suddenness of my movement. I'm the one who was surprised. Don't scare me like that. Released from my tension, I let out a sigh and flopped flat against my desk.
Taku, 大丈夫?
We've never been okay. As usual, Rimi took a peek at my face. Flustered, I lowered my eyes.
顔、真っ青だよ。汗もすごいし。目も血走っちゃってる。
Was Rimi on my side, or was she my enemy? Because she saved me once, my wariness toward her had faded considerably. However, on the other hand, I still hadn't resolved the suspicious points about her. What had been going on when I saw her covered in blood at the staking? We were supposed to have been friendly classmates since freshman year, but why was she completely missing from my memory?
タク、体調悪いの?
Rimi tilted her head, looking troubled.
なんでもない。
I looked away from Rimi. I couldn't ask her such things to her face. My nerves were utterly frayed by the time today's classes finally came to an end. Even during class, I had ceaselessly and warily surveyed my surroundings, paying no attention to the classes themselves. I hadn't slept since yesterday, but the sheer tension of it kept me wide awake. School today had felt virtually endless, and its excessive length had sent me into despair time and again. I wondered why one's sense of time could be so drastically affected by one's state of mind. They say time flows at a fixed and constant rate, but maybe that's a lie. Your subjective point of view can change the speed of time. In fact, I had a hard time thinking of people's attempt to affix standalone values to periods of time, like seconds and hours, as anything but a plot to cover up the difference in subjectively perceived time, and thus make all of humanity recognize it the same way. And suspecting the length of time changes based on your subjective perspective, then if you reversed it, would that mean you could actually control its length as well? Or its length at will? That occurred to me because of what Senna had said about controlling the free will of others. If you reversed it, huh?
生まれながらに目が不自由な人でも目の前にある景色がちゃんと見えるようになる。ビデオカメラのような映像機器を介してな。
If you could change the picture from a video camera to electrical signals and send it to someone's brain, making them see it as a series of images, then the reverse would be changing that which you envision in your head to electrical signals and sending it to a videotaping device, thereby turning it back into an image. In fact, there was no reason that said recording device needed to be a video camera. For example, what would happen if you connected them to a hard disk recorder and showed them recordings of a nature program? What if, instead of a nature program, you showed them an anime? Come to think of it, anime was 2D. It was delusionary. But since a person who'd been blind since birth would never actually have witnessed 3D scenery, if you showed them an anime and said, "This is what the world looks like," wouldn't they come to believe that the 2D world itself was reality? That way, the person in question would perceive delusions as being reality, wouldn't they? For example, I don't recall what we did last time, so I think we're gonna do green. I think it might have been green that we did last time. I do not recall, but whatever. We'll just do green again if we did do green last time. If person A put their imaginary visions into a hard disk recorder and transformed it into image data, then sent it to person B, wouldn't A's delusions turn into B's reality? Delusions turning into reality. Theoretically, it should be possible. Ugh, am I some kind of genius? LOL. The magnificence of my idea thrilled me. Perhaps this itself was the way to obtain a D-sword. Hadn't ISA called her D-sword a delusion? Alright. Time to go home and check it out online. I left the classroom and headed for the school exit without a single sidelong glance. However, I didn't forget my custom of walking along the edge of the hallway while hanging my head and doing everything I could to avoid standing out. Since a little time had passed since the ending bell, most people who went straight home were already gone, though students with club activities or cleaning duty remained behind. Somehow, schools give off a lonely, nostalgic feeling once a day's worth of classes have ended. This is true of both old-fashioned wooden school buildings and newer ones like Suame Academy. Although, to be fair, I'd only been to wood-constructed school buildings in Eroge. As I walked through the corridor filled with slanting afternoon light, pondering what sort of useless stuff, I spotted a peculiar figure coming toward me. A girl was tottering along, carrying 2 huge cardboard boxes. The boxes hid her face from me. She probably couldn't see what was ahead of her either. She couldn't possibly have been more precarious. If I were in Eroge, a scenario like this would lead to me colliding with her and setting off a flag, guaranteed. I thought about giving it a shot, but it was a mere thought, of course, and I didn't have any intention of actually trying it out. On the contrary, I stayed on my guard. Chances were strong that she might be an assassin to me sent by Shogun. No, that makes no sense. That dialogue does not make sense. She might have been an assassin sent to kill me by Shogun. She might have been an assassin sent by Shogun to kill me. Not might be an assassin to me sent by Shogun. Makes 0 sense. Massive grammatical error there. You know, you would get red pen markers in an English class with that. Don't get involved, watch out. I paid careful attention to every step she took. She drew still closer to me, swaying first to the right, then to the left. I, on the other hand, walked along the left side of the corridor. I waited until she tilted toward the right, then sped up my pace. By doing so, I managed to pass her safely. Hearing something drop, I cast my gaze downward without a second thought. Someone's student handbook had fallen. Without meaning to, I stopped. Had the cardboard box girl dropped it? Okay, and the bottom says Suame Academy Private High School. I could barely make out what it says because I'm needing to play this in such a tiny window. I thought hard as I contemplated the student handbook. Doubts rose at the back of my head. Why did it fall in now, with this timing? It was too obvious, almost as if someone were urging me to pick it up. Trap? I wondered if she dropped it on purpose. The cardboard box girl had used both arms to hold up her boxes. Neither of her hands had been free. If her student handbook had been kept in her skirt pocket, it would have been impossible for her to take it out and drop it on purpose. Except, it wasn't as if I had actually seen where the handbook had fallen from in the first place. Maybe the cardboard box girl had been holding it from the start, carrying her cardboard boxes in such a way as to conceal it from me. Nothing was certain. It might not have been deliberate. It'd be normal to regard it as coincidence. I then made my gaze follow the figure of the cardboard box girl, or tried to.
Huh?
Right at that very instant, the cardboard box girl turned a corner and went out of sight. I'd only seen her from behind for a second. I didn't think she looked familiar. I felt like she'd had short hair. No, but it also seemed long. I couldn't make a decisive statement either way. I hadn't seen her face either, of course. The cardboard boxes had hidden it as we passed one another. All that remained in the hallway were me and the student handbook. Maybe the common sense response would be to pick it up and take it to the faculty room or chase after the cardboard box girl, but I hesitated to do either. I looked around. I didn't see any other students. All I heard were a number of girls laughing merrily from somewhere far off. I didn't think this was a trap. The handbook's owner was already gone. How might this situation end up entrapping me? Could there be a microscopic bomb planted in the handbook? That was far too unrealistic. So surely nothing would happen even if I picked it up here and now. Right, of course nothing was going to happen. I ought to use it to confirm who the girl was, just in case, because she might be working for Shogun. I'd take a look at her name, class, and headshot and leave the handbook itself back here. I'd take a pass on shouldering the hassle of having to deliver it to the person in question. After glancing around with even greater caution to make sure no one was in the area, I picked up the student handbook and casually opened it to the first page. I hastily flung it away. What was that? An unidentifiable eeriness. It didn't so much freak me out as it made me feel sick. Malicious and blatant harassment aimed at me as an individual. Who would do such a thing? The girl from before, obviously. The girl had been affiliated with Shogun after all. Of course she had. I'd only had a glimpse of the student handbook's contents, but the first page, which should have contained the owner's name, birth date, class, and other information, had been utterly blacked out. Furthermore, the headshot photo that ought to be pasted there had been ripped away. It made me ill. I abruptly experienced nausea. I wanted to leave the place sooner rather than later. Covering my mouth, I went toward the stairs. By the time I accidentally clicked. By the time I blindly came out in the courtyard, I couldn't hold back my urge to vomit anymore. The instant I dropped to my knees, the contents of my stomach came rushing up backwards. The surging stomach acid made the depths of my throat sting. Tears blurred my field of sight. It grew hard to breathe. The aftertaste of bile in my mouth made me feel sick. It seemed like I was closer to the end of my psychological rope than I thought. It might also have been because I stayed up all night. I looked around ceaselessly as I wiped the edges of my mouth. No one was there. But the shadows and blind spots I normally wouldn't take notice of seemed dreadful to me. I began to think that Yua and Shogun might be hiding somewhere. Once I made myself believe it, I lost the ability to take a single step away from this place. Somebody, save me. I wanted to cry. At the same time, the urge to vomit rose in me yet again. I didn't throw up this time around, but I had dry heaves over and over. It hurt so bad. More and more tears started overflowing. Then someone softly began stroking my back. Frightened, I looked behind me.
大丈夫。
It was Rimi.
大丈夫だよ。
Those words weren't a question aimed at me. They were a gentle conclusion.
私はタクの味方だから。
But are you really Rimi? She didn't grimace at the rotten stench of the filth I'd retched up. She didn't show any indication of despising me, even when she saw my face covered in tears and nose drippings, with vomit stuck to the corners of my mouth. She smiled serenely, as though to reassure me. She drew close to my side, lightly stroking my back. Why? Before this, and now, when I thought I wanted someone to save me, why did Rimi materialize before my eyes? Because Rimi was here with me now. I felt relief. I felt my burdens lighten. Before I knew it, I'd begun divulging all my emotions. Even though I was bad at talking about myself.
助けて。一人は怖いんだ。
Maybe this is why I'd come to school. Up until now, I thought I was better off alone. Even now, of course, I was frightened of talking to people. I had no self-confidence when it came to making contact with people. But being alone with Shogun and Yua hunted me... Being alone while Shogun and Yua hunted me down made me feel far more insecure and scared and forlorn. I wanted someone to stay with me. They didn't have to be kind to me. I just wanted to be in a place with other people.
一人は怖い。
だったら 私が一緒にいてあげる。
Those words held no malice, nor any reluctance.
さすがに24時間ずっとは無理だけど。
Her shy gaze suddenly tilted up toward the sky. What was she looking at with such distant eyes?
朝一緒に学校行って、学校では休み時間にどうでもいいこと話して、お昼休みは一緒にご飯食べて、夕方一緒に帰って、帰るついでにたまにどこかのお店に寄ったりして、タクの部屋でちょっとだけおしゃべりして、それでまた明日ねって手を振って別れて。
Well, in that case, I guess we gotta clean our room.
そんなのでいいなら私いくらでもしてあげるよ。そういうの結構憧れなんだ。
That was almost like being boyfriend and girlfriend. I was stupefied. Was she talking seriously? Yeah, her face certainly seemed to say so.
どうしてどうしてそこまでしてくれるの？
それは
Because there was definitely a flag standing here, right? It wouldn't be weird for her to say, because I love you in this situation, right? Not that I could think of a single reason why Rimi would fall for me. No. Wait, this was Zhuang Lang's trap. Something similar had happened in the past. Yua had fooled me, driving me to the brink of despair. That's why I couldn't afford to expect too much. Start by envisioning the worst case scenario. Rimi too might be my
石
Without warning, she saluted me. The suddenness of her actions left me shaken, making me think in astonishment that maybe she was about to reveal her true nature. But her face still wore the same endlessly soft smile.
そんなの友達だからに決まってるでしょ。私にしてみればタクを助けてあげるのは当然なの。どうしてとか寂しいこと言わない。わかった？
うん。
As friends, huh? If it were as a couple, I might have felt like my life had finally begun for real. But even if we were just friends, it made me incredibly happy. Having another person to be nice to me. Having another person try to do something for my sake without seeking anything in return. I'd never known it would bring me such joy. It might be the first time I'd ever felt like this. And more than anything, she made me believe I wasn't alone. Rimi's existence had saved me. My nausea had finally settled down and I felt considerably better.
はい、使う？
What Rimi held out to me was a vermilion, floral-scented handkerchief. I accepted it meekly, but I hesitated to use it.
汚しちゃっていいよ。タクにあげる。
ありがとう。
I felt bad about it, but I decided that I might as well accept her generosity. I wiped the edges of my bile-soiled mouth. It was the first time I'd received a present from a girl outside my family, although I wasn't sure whether or not I should call this a gift. Because I had felt as if I were all alone in the world, even a little thing like this induced the same gratitude in me as something far more precious. My happiness and relief threatened to make my tears spill out again.
それじゃあ帰ろっか。
Rimi asked me in a carefree voice.
一緒に。
Apparently, we'll leave school together. Her suggestion from before was already a done deal. Though I hadn't given her an answer yet. Not that I had any intention of refusing. I was frightened of being alone. I didn't want to be by myself. Right now, Rimi was the only person I could lean on. That said, I couldn't relax simply because Rimi was going to walk me home. I picked a different route from usual on the way back and proceeded cautiously, trembling all the while. Every shadow seemed to hold danger. I was tormented by the delusion that Yua or Shogun might be around the corner each time I approached an intersection, and my legs would go weak, halting my progress. At such times, Rimi would go ahead and scout out the road beyond the intersection, then turn back and nod at me.
大丈夫。誰もいないよ。
Relieved, I followed after her. Rimi went along with me without a single grimace.
ねえ、聞いていいかな？一体、何があったの？
I was a little torn over whether or not to tell her about it. If I told her here, and if she too ended up being targeted by Shogun, it'd be my fault for getting her involved.
あ、話したくないなら、無理に話さなくても。
いや、話すよ。
My mouth had already started moving. I definitely didn't want her to get caught up in it, but I didn't explain anything. But if I didn't explain anything, Rimi wouldn't understand the gravity of my position. For my own sake, I ultimately chose to close my eyes to the potential danger to Rimi. She'd been the one to say she'd stay with me, so it's not like I was doing anything wrong. The fact that Shogun was the true New Gen criminal, the fact that Yua was his underling, the fact that they were targeting me. What had happened in front of the 107 building? I summarized everything, stuttering all the while. Yeah, I know. It sounds like a load of BS. Capital BS, I know. When I spoke of how Shogun had appeared in front of me riding his wheelchair, Rimi made a sober face and lapsed into thought. I'd been thinking I wanted to ask her about that incident. This was the ideal opportunity to do so.
いたかな？車椅子のおじいさんなんて。
There was so little confidence in her answer.
思い出して、大切なことだ。
でも、
Rimi scrunched up her eyebrows as if she didn't want to say it.
そもそも、あの時、渋谷の駅前が無人だったなんてことなかったよ。
Of course it wasn't.
いつもと同じだった。
This was how it must have appeared to Rimi at the time. If possible, I'd wanted her to agree with me, but Rimi and I, out of the two spectacles we viewed, whose was correct? Was I mistaken, after all? Had that empty Shibuya been a delusion of mine? But that created a slight problem. The elderly wheelchair-bound man who had appeared in the depopulated Shibuya, Shogun. How was I supposed to explain him? If the depopulation had been delusionary, Shogun would have to have been a delusion as well.
駅前って人が多いでしょ？だから車椅子の人がいてもなかなか気がつかないだろうし。要するに見てないってこと。
And then you can try and rationalize this by saying that, well, he was there. The only part that was a delusion was that Shibuya was empty. Everything else was actually, in fact, real.
ごめんね、役に立てなくて。
At the very least, Shogun wasn't a figment of my imagination. At first, I thought he was a delusion, but my understanding of the situation had flipped 180 degrees upon the emergence of the group dive video. Shogun was real. Shogun existed. But maybe the empty Shibuya part of it had been imaginary. Even then, the area around the station had been overflowing with people. And I alone had viewed a different kind of scenery. What? How could that be?
ねえ、それよりお願いがあるんだけど、いい？
Rimi pressed her hands together in supplication.
CD を買いに行きたいんだ。せっかくここまで来てからちょっと寄っていきたいんだけど、いいかな？
Truthfully, I wanted to go home to my base this very instant. I'd come here, taking the long way because I'd been considering the possibility that Yua and Shogun were were lurking somewhere, not because I wanted to shop. Except if I turned her down here, it might damage Rimi's mood, and she was the one who'd said she would be there for me. If I screwed up, she could get angry and go back by herself. That'd be problematic. I needed to have Rimi with me. On my own, I wasn't even sure I could make it back to my base. In the end, I found myself unable to refuse her. All I could do was haltingly tag along with her. Perhaps it would be ordinary to think that surely even someone like Yua wouldn't launch an attack on me with this many people around. But my fear that they were hiding somewhere nearby, blending in with the rest of the crowd, far surpassed that. I shrieked intentionally each time I came close to bumping shoulders with the people passing me by.
パトカーだ。
Rimi's words gave me a start. I quickly hid behind her. Just as she said, 2 police cars were parked in the street, and nearby them stood 3 uniformed officers. Let's see, we got a sign that says, "Protect Shibuya from terrorists, get them out for a safe city." I assume that's like, kill the criminals or something, I can't really tell. I think that says criminals something. And I can't make out the rest of these little tiny signs. The police too were chasing me. I was obviously innocent, but the incompetent police couldn't grasp that. Were those policemen searching for me too? Or so I thought, but apparently that wasn't the case. Their lines of sight rested on the vast quantities of people who traversed the road as though they owned it. Were those people protesters? They came equipped with various standard issue items, from banners to posters with messages on them to forehead bands. I bit my lip upon seeing a child tripping along, pulled by the hand of his parent, with "Whose eyes are those?" written messily in marker on the front of his t-shirt.
何のデモだろうね。
There were a variety of marchers, young and old, male and female alike. They paraded solemnly along, but once in a while they'd cry out in unison, "Drive the demons out of Shibuya."
悪魔？
Many of the posters were inscribed with messages like "Drive the demons away from our city, protect Shibuya from terrorists." This had to be a show of resistance against the New Gen incidents. There was no point in demonstrating about it. If you got that much free time on your hands, find and kill Shogun. That way all my worries will vanish.
タク、行こう。
Disinterested, Rimi shifted her gaze away from the demonstrators and began walking toward the entrance to a CD shop. As soon as we came in the store, Rimi went straight for the indie music corner. Unlike the J-pop corner, there weren't many customers in the vicinity. Rimi stopped in front of the P shelf and began searching for the CD she had in mind. But her shoulders soon sagged.
やっぱりないな。
An indie group whose name began with P. Could it be...
タクはファンタズムってバンドを知ってる？今話題になってるけど。
Of course, that's who you were looking for. As I'd guessed, there was no way I wouldn't know. I'd been to one of their concerts and I owned their CD. Rimi smiled ruefully when I nodded.
私、そういう情報は結構疎くて、最近になって知ったんだ。それで、友達に借りようかと思ったんだけど、なかなか手に入らないらしくて、誰も持ってないんだよ。だから、CD 買うしかないかなって思って、ここ1週間ぐらいあちこち探してみたんだけど、どこも売り切れ中。次はいつ入るんだろう。
僕持ってる。
Rimi's eyes went round.
持ってるって。CD？
I nodded and Rimi placed her hands on my shoulders. So I let this part run long because I was kind of figuring we'd get to one of those sort of, I guess, partway through a chapter sort of marks, you know, where You get the like fade to black where the screen goes from static to black with the, I guess, part of the logo or something on it. That very clearly is not happening right now. That probably won't happen until we go through this delusion, and we're already at about the 40-minute mark, and this delusion will probably run a good 10, maybe 15 minutes, and well, that's a little bit longer than I was going for this series. So we're gonna go ahead and end this part here. I will see you all next time. A quick reminder that I do have a Discord and a Patreon. I do highly recommend that you join the Discord if you want to stay updated on what's going on with the channel, because that is my go-to place for posting about any potential interruptions to my recording or streaming schedule, which is something I've been getting into more recently. I generally stream. I've been able to pretty well keep to it of basically every Saturday at around about 10 p.m. Eastern time. Sometimes I might start around like 9 or 9:30, but generally it's 10 p.m. And I'll typically stream for around about 2 hours. If I start early, I'll stream for 3 hours. Basically, I stream until about midnight, give or take. Sometimes a little bit longer than that if I'm in the middle of like a mission or whatever. But yeah, so that is going to be it for this part. I will see you all next time, but until then, a goodbye and farewell.